Picture this, the year is 142 AD, the Bathhouse of Pompeii. Steam rises from heated pools as wealthy Romans discuss politics and philosophy. Then through the entrance limps a 16-year-old boy named Gaius. His left arm dangles at an obscene angle, bone pressing against skin. His tunic is soaked in blood. His father, Senator Aurelius, doesn't rush to help. Instead, he grabs the boy by the collar and asks one question: "Did you win?" Gaius nods, teeth grinding against the pain. His father releases him, satisfied. "Good, tomorrow you play again." Meet Senator Aurelius, war hero, respected statesman, loving father, and the perfect Roman. Which means he's willing to cripple his own son to prove a point. He's not the villain of this story, he's the system. And the system convinced an entire civilization that breaking children builds character. This isn't about the Colosseum. This isn't about gladiators. This is about the thousands of fathers like Aurelius who looked at their wounded sons and saw success. The teachers who praised boys for not crying while their bones shattered. The mothers who sent their children to play games designed to maim them. I'm Crown and Dagger, and every week I expose the people history turned into heroes, but were actually monsters with good press. Today, you're going to meet the architects of Rome's most brutal games, the fathers and emperors and philosophers who built a culture where childhood was warfare. If you're ready to see how Senator Aurelius and men like him destroyed a generation in the name of virtue, hit like now. Because every like is a vote against the toxic idea that suffering builds strength. Subscribe, because we're about to expose 10 men who turned play into torture and convinced everyone it was for the children's own good. Let's make sure their legacy dies here. Here's what you need to understand first. When historians talk about Roman violence, they focus on the arena, but the arena was only the surface. The real violence happened everywhere, in schools, in homes, on street corners, in bathhouses. It happened daily, and it was called recreation. The physician Galen served as personal doctor to gladiators and emperors for over 40 years. He documented something shocking. He treated more broken bones, more dislocated joints, more fatal injuries from civilian games than from professional gladiatorial combat. Let that sink in. Regular Romans playing games for fun were more dangerous than trained killers fighting for survival. Between 150 and 170 AD, medical records from Rome alone show over 2,000 deaths from recreational games. That's more than 100 people per year dying while playing, not executed, not murdered. They volunteered and they never came home. Why? Because Roman culture was built on one concept: virtues, courage, strength. The absolute refusal to back down from any challenge. In Rome, declining to play a game wasn't just cowardly, it was social suicide. Better to risk your life than your reputation. These games weren't accidents. They were designed this way, engineered to test pain tolerance, to build warriors, to separate the weak from the strong. From age 5, every Roman child learned the same lesson. Your value is measured by how much suffering you can endure. So let's count down the 10 most brutal games that shocked even the Romans themselves, starting with the game that killed young Gaius. Number 10, the Trigon. 3 players form a triangle. They throw hard leather balls stuffed with sand and lead weights. The rules: no catching with 2 hands, that's for cowards. 1 hand only. The goal: outlast your opponents. The philosopher Seneca watched Trigon matches and wrote, "I have seen men's fingers bent backward until they snapped like dry branches. I have seen jaws shattered from missed catches. I have seen eyes destroyed by direct hits." These weren't soft balls. They were weapons wrapped in leather, traveling at brutal speeds. But here's what makes this game evil. It was invented by General Marcus Curius in 290 BC as military training. He wanted soldiers who could catch spears mid-flight and ignore pain during combat. That's fine for warriors. But then fathers like Senator Aurelius saw it and thought, perfect. My 5-year-old needs this. Schools across Rome made Trigon mandatory. Tutors were instructed to punish boys who flinched or cried. One pedagogue named Aurelius became famous for beating students who dropped the ball, literally. He believed pain taught focus. Parents paid him extra for being cruel, and boys like Marcus died proving they could take the hit. Not because they wanted to play, because men like Aurelius told them their worth depended on it. Number 9. Harpastum. Imagine rugby but with teams of up to 30 men, no field boundaries, no protective gear, and no rules except one: get the ball across the line by any means necessary. The poet Martial described it perfectly. The Harpastum player returns home with his tunic in shreds, his face a mask of bruises, and his pride intact. Dislocated shoulders were common, broken ribs expected, crushed fingers standard. The physician Galen treated so many Harpastum casualties he wrote an entire medical text categorizing the game's injury patterns. But here's where it gets sinister. Harpastum had a hidden class war built into it. Wealthy Romans hired enslaved players as battering rams, human shields who absorbed the worst hits while masters scored points safely behind them. Slaves who refused to play were whipped. Slaves who played too well were sold off for embarrassing their masters. The game itself was a microcosm of Roman society, brutal, hierarchical, inescapable. You played your position, you suffered your role, and you never questioned the system. Number 8. Datadym luthier, playing with fingers. Two men face each other. Simultaneously, they flash between 1 and 5 fingers while shouting a number between 2 and 10, trying to guess the total. Sounds harmless, right? Until you learn what Romans bet on these games. In 56 BC, a gambling dispute over Datadym luthier sparked a riot in the Forum that killed 170 people. The Senate tried banning the game 3 times. It never worked because everyone played it: senators, soldiers, prostitutes, slaves. It was Rome's universal addiction. Players bet money, property, wives, children, and lives. The historian Suetonius recorded a senator who lost his entire estate in a single night playing Datadym luthier. Rather than face the shame, he walked to the Tiber River and drowned himself. The game wasn't the problem. The culture was. Romans were taught that backing down from any wager, no matter how insane, was worse than death itself. Number 7. Roman Knucklebones. This ancient dice game used actual bones from sheep ankles carved and weighted. Players threw them, betting on how they'd land. But Roman knucklebones had a variation that archaeological evidence confirms happened regularly. When standard bones got boring, Romans used human finger bones from executed criminals. The macabre prize, a complete set of 10 finger bones from a single victim, became a status symbol among wealthy gamblers. Pliny the Elder documented dealers who sold matched sets of criminal bones at premium prices. The children played with sheep bones. Adults played with human remains. And nobody saw anything wrong with this because Rome had normalized death to the point where corpses became toys. The line between entertainment and desecration had completely dissolved. Number 6. Micatio. Similar to Datadym luthier, but faster, louder, and played in taverns where wine flowed and tempers exploded. Players slammed their fists on tables, shouting numbers in rapid succession. Matches lasted hours, crowds gathered, bets escalated, and when someone inevitably accused another of cheating, knives came out. Cicero mentioned Micatio in his letters, calling it the game that makes brothers into enemies. Roman tavern owners kept hired muscle specifically to break up Micatio brawls, which happened nightly. The twisted part. Micatio was considered a gentleman's game. Upper-class Romans played it to demonstrate their mental quickness. But the quickness they demonstrated most often was how fast they could go from civilized conversation to stabbing someone over 5 copper coins. Number 5. The Troy game, Ludus Troia. This was an equestrian competition where teenage boys from noble families rode horses at full gallop through complex patterns and mock combat formations. Sounds like a sophisticated display of horsemanship, right? Except Emperor Augustus personally designed the modern version to be more dangerous after he thought Roman youth were getting soft. Then his own grandson, Lucius, broke his leg so severely the bone pierced through his skin. He died from infection 3 days later. Augustus was devastated. He banned the game immediately. The ban lasted 6 months. Then Senator Aurelius and men like him pressured the emperor to reinstate it. They argued that without the Troy game, Roman boys would lose their edge. They said Lucius died honorably, that his death had meaning. Augustus caved. The emperor of Rome couldn't protect his own family tradition from men who valued reputation over children's lives. Pliny, the younger, documented at least 30 noble deaths from the Troy game during his lifetime. Broken necks. Trampling, one boy impaled on another rider's ceremonial lance. The elite like Aurelius sacrificed their own children to maintain the fantasy that brutality equals strength. And when even an emperor tried to stop it, they bullied him into submission. Number 4. Roman boxing pugilatus. Forget modern boxing gloves. Romans wrapped their hands in leather straps embedded with metal studs and sharpened fragments. They called them cestus, literally hand destroyers. Matches had no rounds, no breaks, no weight classes. You fought until someone couldn't continue, which usually meant unconscious, crippled, or dead. The physician Galen wrote, "I have set more broken facial bones from boxing than from all other recreational activities combined." The cestus doesn't just break, it shatters. But here's the nightmare detail. Roman boxing matches for amateurs were often held at funeral games. Families hired boxers to fight at gravesides, believing the blood spilled honored the dead. Attendees would drink wine and place bets while 2 men destroyed each other 10 feet from a corpse. Death celebrating death, entertainment consuming itself. Number 3. Naumatia miniatures. The rich couldn't afford full-scale naval battle reenactments, so they created miniature versions in private pools and atriums. They used enslaved children as sailors on small boats, armed with real weapons scaled down but still deadly. These children fought actual naval battles in pools barely 40 feet across, while dinner guests watched and applauded. Suetonius documented a party where Emperor Domitian hosted a miniature naumatia. 13 enslaved children participated, 5 died, 1 lost an arm. The guests voted it the most creative entertainment of the season. This wasn't the Colosseum, this was someone's house party. Rome's appetite for violence was so normalized that watching children kill each other became dinner theater for the elite. Number 2. Ludus Latrunculorum, the game of mercenaries. Think chess, but with a Roman twist that will make your stomach turn. This was a strategy board game where wealthy players bet enslaved people as pieces. When your piece was captured on the board, that enslaved person was beaten, branded, or killed in front of spectators. The historian Suetonius recorded Emperor Caligula playing this game at a dinner party. He lost 12 pieces in a single match. 12 human beings were executed at tableside while guests ate and discussed philosophy. This wasn't just cruel, it was philosophically obscene. Romans claimed to value reason, law, and civilization, yet their intellectuals played board games where human lives were disposable tokens. The game revealed the truth. Roman virtue was performance. Beneath the togas and rhetoric, life meant nothing if you had power and everything if you didn't. Number 1. The ordeal games. These weren't official. They happened in alleys in slums among soldiers on campaign. Players volunteered for tests of pain tolerance, holding burning coals, cutting parallel lines into your own arms, stabbing a blade between your fingers at increasing speeds, standing motionless while others threw knives at you. There was no winner, no prize, just the respect of men who'd already proven they could endure anything. The physician Celsus documented soldiers who died from infections after ordeal games, wounds they inflicted on themselves for no reason except to prove they could. This is where Rome's obsession revealed itself completely. The games weren't about winning. They were about suffering as identity, pain as currency, violence as language. So which game was the most depraved? The one that used human bones. The one that killed children at dinner parties. The one where people mutilated themselves for applause. Drop your answer in the comments. But here's the real question. Which villain was worse? The emperors who hosted these games? Or the Senator Aureliuses? The fathers, the teachers, the good Romans who looked their sons in the eye and said, "Play again tomorrow." If you think Senator Aurelius is the villain, hit like right now. Because every like is a vote saying, we're done glorifying toxic masculinity disguised as tradition. We're done pretending that abuse builds character. We're done letting men like Aurelius be remembered as heroes just because they wore togas instead of track suits. Subscribe to Crown and Dagger if you want me to keep exposing the great men of history who were actually just child abusers with good publicity. Because next week, we're investigating another civilization's twisted father figures, ones that make Senator Aurelius look merciful. Here's what Rome teaches us. Senator Aurelius didn't destroy Rome, men like him built it. The violence in the arena was just theater. The real horror was in homes where fathers convinced sons that love meant breaking them. Where mothers praised boys for not crying. Where entire communities celebrated suffering as success. By the 3rd century, Rome's hospitals were overwhelmed with game injuries. But they never treated the real disease. A culture that weaponized fatherhood. Gaius, the boy with the broken arm from our opening, historical records show he played again the next day, and the day after, and every day until he was 17 when he died in a Harpastum match, crushed beneath a pile of players while his father watched from the stands and applauded his courage. Senator Aurelius lived to be 71. He was eulogized as a model father who raised his son with proper Roman values. His statue stood in the Forum for 200 years. That's the real brutality, not just that these games existed, but that the men who forced children to play them were celebrated, honored, remembered as the best of Rome. Today, when someone tells you tough love builds character, or that boys need to toughen up, or that pain is just weakness leaving the body, think of Senator Aurelius standing over his broken son and demanding he prove his worth by suffering more. That's the warning carved into Rome's ruins. When a culture glorifies fathers who destroy their children in the name of strength, it doesn't build an empire. It builds a graveyard with monuments. If this video made you angry, good. Channel that anger into a like. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that the Senator Aureliuses of history weren't heroes. They were villains with good marketing. And never forget. Every time we celebrate tough fathers and warrior cultures, we're rebuilding Rome's arena one broken child at a time. See you in the next nightmare. And remember, liking this video means you're standing against every Senator Aurelius in history who tried to convince us that cruelty was love.